Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Kathleen Gelrain. If you don't know me, I know a lot of people who are on this Zoom meeting right now, but not everyone. I'm the Executive Director at Smack Mellon, and I'd like to welcome you all to Smack Mellon's second 5 Max. We're really excited about this new program that we developed to keep conversations going in our diverse communities. These are evenings of sharing work and networking with an eye to widening our community's connections during this period of social distancing. They're open to everyone, and these evenings are especially for artists who want to see and show new work. We've all been feeling pretty isolated, and many have not been able to make art right now. In this time of staying home, we thought it would be a good idea to create an opportunity for artists to meet new artists and form relationships that may continue beyond tonight and next week. We hope this will result in a widening of your community and ours. The 5 Max events consist of a two-part program that takes place on alternating weeks. So this first part, we present 5 artists. They show their work for 5 minutes. Each presentation by each artist is followed by 5 minutes of audience questions with each artist. So if you do ask a question, I would ask you to just keep it short, because 5 minutes is a really short time to ask a question and for the artist to answer you. And we'd like to try to fit as many questions in that 5 minutes as we can. After this program, artists who are here attending tonight can sign up for a chance to participate in a closed group meeting to take place next Thursday, July 9th at 6 p.m. So there is not an audience for these groups. There will be 5 groups of 5 artists each, and each group will be led by one of the artists that are here tonight. And then 1 staff member or board member from Smack Mellon will be running the images for that. If you're interested in participating in part 2 next week, the link to our submittable application is on the chat. Now, we're really pretty much taking these artists as they apply, but we do need to have some flexibility in that we represent a majority of women artists, and we like to always have a diverse group of artists that we're supporting. So you can copy the link from the chat. It'll also be on our website. And on the application, you will upload 10 images of your work, and you can also submit links to video. Please follow the instructions for the size and how to name your images, and we'll select the artists in the order that they get to submit their application. So because we require that only artists who have been here tonight as audience members can participate next week, we ask that you please show your name on your Zoom window. If you think you might be interested in participating. So if you don't know how to do that, you just click on your name and scroll down to where it says rename. And then you can rename it with your name. Like if you're on somebody else's computer or something, or your name isn't there for some reason, you should do that if you want to participate in part 2, because we will compare our audience to those applications. And the deadline for applying is Sunday at 11:59 p.m. I know that these are really difficult times for everyone and harder for some than others. If you're able to and would like to make a contribution to Smack Mellon to support our programs like these and our other programs, the link to our donate page is in the chat, or will be in the chat. And no contribution is too small. We will put your donation to good use. And thank you to those of you who have already donated. We really appreciate it. Please note that this session will be recorded and may be posted online, and by participating in this session, you consent to this recording. We've added a feature for this 5 Max that we didn't have last time, which is captioning for people with hearing impairment, and it will be provided via Otter Live Notes. To access the live transcript in the Zoom meeting, click the red live indicator, which, if you look at your screen, is on the top left corner. You click that, and you scroll down and select View Stream on Otter AI Live Notes in that window dropdown. And the live transcript will open in a separate browser window. So you might have to move your Zoom window over a little bit to see it, but everything we say will magically appear in text. So you can do that just in case you think you might want to refer to it if you want to. And if you don't know how to open the chat, you go down to the bottom of your screen and there's a bubble that says chat, and you click on that, and then those links that I mentioned will be in the chat. You can copy and paste them into your own document. Okay, so I think that was all I needed to say, and now let's get started. I'd like to thank the artists who will be sharing their work with us tonight: Michael Paul BRITTO, Cecile Chong, Liz Collins, Florencia ESCUDERO, and Rotem Lineal. And thanks to the Smack Mellon team who created this new program: staff members Gabriel de Guzman, Audrey Irving, Javier Maria, Becky Sellinger, and board members Ilana Herzog, Rob Hickman, and Ward Shelley. And now I would like to introduce Gabriel de Guzman, Smack Mellon Curator and Director of Exhibitions. Gabriel joined Smack Mellon in 2017. As Curator and Director of Exhibitions, he is responsible for organizing and producing all of the exhibitions in the gallery. His recent curatorial projects include the group exhibitions Empathy from fall 2018 and Uproot from fall 2017. Previously, Gabriel was Curator of Visual Arts at Wave Hill. He has also presented exhibitions as a guest curator at many venues in and around New York, including Dorsky Gallery Curatorial Programs, Bronx Art Space, Rush Arts Gallery, Dyckman Farmhouse Museum, and FOCO at Andrew Friedman Home, and the Bronx Museum's 2013 AIM Biennial. Gabriel earned an MA in Art History from Hunter College and a BA in Art History from the University of Virginia. And so I'll pass it along to Gabriel.
Thank you. Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you for that intro. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us for our 5 Max program. And I am Gabriel, as Kathleen mentioned, and I'll be your guide this evening. Before we get started, let me just tell you how the program is going to run. I'll be introducing each artist, and then one by one, they will each give a presentation of 5 minutes max, followed by 5 minutes of questions and comments from the audience. Then we'll move on to the next artist until all 5 have presented. During the presentations, I'll be sharing my screen to show the images of the artist's work. I'll be keeping track of time, and we'll give the artist a 1-minute warning to wrap up. If everyone else could just keep yourself on mute during the presentations, that would be appreciated. And then during the audience Q&A after each talk, I'll encourage you to participate by asking a question or making a comment about the artist's work. To do that, you should write "I have a question" in the chat, and I'll call on you to ask your question to the artist. But if you'd rather not speak, then you can just write your question out in the chat, and I'll read it out loud for the artist to answer. And I'll try to go in the order received. And then while I have my screen shared, your chat window might not be visible. So to open the chat window, move your cursor to the bottom of the screen and click on chat. You'll have to kind of zhuzh things around between the Zoom window, the chat window, the Otter Live Notes. There's going to be a lot of different windows open possibly. So just please refrain from side conversations in the chat so I can easily find the questions during the Q&A portions. And then after 5 minutes of Q&A, we'll move on to the next presenting artist. So it's going to go quickly and lively. Okay, so I'd like to welcome tonight's artists. We're really grateful to you for participating in this program. We're and maybe when I call your name, you can wave or something. So we're going to start with Cecile Chong, followed by Liz Collins, and then Michael Palparito, then Florencia Escudero, and then Rotem Lineal. So thanks a lot. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. So Cecile Chong was born in Ecuador to Chinese parents and now lives and works in New York. Her solo exhibitions have been presented at Smack Mellon, Knies Barnes Fine Art, Selena Gallery, Brick House, Emerson Gallery Berlin, Honey Ramka, Figure Works, Praxis New York, and Art Space. Her work has also been featured in group shows at El Museo del Barrio, Nevada Museum of Art, the Bronx Museum, Q Art Foundation, Wave Hill, Sue Scott Gallery in New York, and Cynthia Corbett Gallery in London. Cecile has received numerous fellowships and residencies, including the Block Gallery AIM Artist Hub, Brick Media Arts, the Joan Mitchell Center, Wave Hill Winter Workspace, the Lower East Side Print Shop, Jerome Foundation Travel and Study Grant, Center for Book Arts, Socrates Sculpture Park, Artists in the Marketplace at the Bronx Museum, Urban Artists Initiative NYC, and Algira Emerge. Cecile earned an MFA from Parsons, the New School for Design, an MA in Education from Hunter College, and a BA in Studio Art from Queens College. So Cecile, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer.
Okay.
Ready, get out. I'm going to start with your first slide and then I'll start the timer. So okay. Ready, set, go.
Great. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So I create painting, sculpture, and installation work where I layer materials, identities, and histories. My work is about cultural interaction and interpretation and the commonalities that we share with nature and with each other. So this piece is called Rules of Trade. It's an encaustic painting. I've been thinking about the history of cross-cultural exchange. So I've been looking a lot into the history of the ancient Silk Road. Basically, there are three elements to my paintings: my use of materials as signifiers, my appropriation of figures from children's books from East and West, and also using image of a wawa. A wawa is a Quechua word that means baby or a child. And in my work, they represent tabula rasa, a blank slate, that is witnessing cultural encounter. So they look like thumb babies in this piece. They're the green figures, thank you, Gabriel, that you see in the baskets and on the tree branches. Next.
Yep.
This piece is called DNA matching. So I was reacting to the cruelty and the absurdity of family separation that is still happening at the US and Mexico border. Next, please. This one is titled Bully. I was thinking about this character that is being, this crew character that is separating these living entities into different jars and spaces. Next, please. This is my, it's called El Dorado, the New 49ers. It's a public art installation that is traveling through the 5 boroughs of New York City, being installed in each borough per year. So this year is going to Staten Island. It will be installed at the Newhouse Center for Contemporary Art at Snug Harbor. So the top 2 images are from Sunset Park in Brooklyn. The bottom left is from Queens, the Lewis Latimer House. And the bottom right is from Wave Hill from last summer in the Bronx. The history of El Dorado is something that I've been obsessed with as a child. And I was really triggered by the president's attitude towards immigrants a few years ago. And also the history of El Dorado when the Spanish conquistadores arrived in South America and demanded all this gold and treasures from the natives, which was never found. So I thought, how about if I would present it as a contemporary archaeological site in New York City, honoring the 49% of New York City households that speak a language other than English. So I made 100 of these sculptures and I painted 49 of them gold. Next, please. So up until that point, I was using nature as a setting for my work. And in the winter of 2017, I was an artist in residence at Wave Hill for the winter workspace program, where I started gathering materials from the ground and actually from their compost pile. And I dipped them in encaustic and I started making these wall installations for the first time. Next, please. And the piece that I made there is titled On the Nature of Winter. Next, please. That summer, I went to New Orleans and I spent a month at the Joan Mitchell Center as an artist in residence. And I continued working with similar technique, finding materials from the ground and pinning them on the wall, creating a composition and a wall installation. Next, please. Yeah, so this piece is called Placeholder. That's the final version. Next, please. And then returning to New York, I made this portable and malleable piece that is called Chicken Little, referencing the fear mongering in respect of immigration. Next, please. And then this is my last image.
Okay.
Yes. Of other nature. I was extremely fortunate to be able to create this piece at Smack Mellon. And also I'm very thankful that our show had the full run. The show actually came down on February 25th. And exactly 2 weeks later, I was already in quarantine. So I was triggered by the fires on the Amazon forest and the jungle that the summer of 2019, I was visiting my family in Ecuador, and when the fire started, and I became really sad thinking about how humans were destroying nature. We're treating Mother Nature as though Mother Nature is not part of us, as though Mother Nature is like a separate entity. So I worked on a metal fence and I made one side very lush and the other side very stunted with 60 Wawa sculptures, a video projection, and a sound collage. I think my time is up.
Yeah, 5 seconds under.
Wow.
Thanks, Cecile.
Okay, thank you.
So who has questions for Cecile about any of the specific works that she showed us, or in general about her practice? Just either write "I have a question" in the chat, or you can actually type out a question and I'll read it. Don't be shy. Okay, so Elmira Mohebali has a question. Do you want to ask your question, Elmira? Oh, yeah.
Is it okay if I ask it?
Yes.
Thank you for your beautiful presentation. I'm wondering, because I'm a video artist and I can't help it to see all the narrative aspects of your work. Have you done any narrative video or any type of work that is sequential to the stories that you tell?
Thank you, Elmira, or Almira, how do you say your name? Almira. Thank you for that question. I have actually just started making stop motion animation. I don't know if that counts to your question. Yeah, my childhood was very intense, like living in Ecuador, then living in Asia with my grandmother for 5 years. So I feel like behind everything that I make, there is like a personal story or a childhood story behind it. So far, my stop motion animation mostly deals with my experience with languages, like learning a language, forgetting a language, and relearning a language. So yeah, please stay in touch. I would love to show you what I come up with, so to see what you think. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. And Cindy has a question. Cindy.
Hi. Hi, Cecile. Thank you so much. Beautiful work. I wanted to know how you decide what scale to work at in your projects. I'm familiar with your very small scale, like the first piece that you showed here. And I didn't realize you worked at much larger scale. So I'm curious sort of how you make that decision of what scale your work.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Cindy. So as I said before, I think regarding your question, I felt that I was using nature as a setting. And then I thought about how about if the figures in my paintings, they're appropriated from books. So then I started thinking, how about if I start making installations where the viewer will become the figures in my narratives? So that's how it really started. I also wanted to invite people to step into my work. And with the public art piece, I always felt like I wanted a bigger, broader audience, not just people that would come to the gallery. I was also a public school teacher for many years, and I just felt like I would have loved for my students to be able to enjoy my artwork being out in parks. So, and I did achieve that. So yeah, I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Wendy Cohen has a question.
Hi, Cecile. My question is related to the one that you were just talking about. I'm wondering if you still make smaller scale works, especially during this time of quarantine, or if you work exclusively in installation works now.
Yeah, thanks for your question. I do make small paintings still. I'm actually, a side project that I'm doing is that I'm making reference to the blue and white wear throughout the Silk Road as a transmitter of ideas and images. But unfortunately, my studio, I have not been in my studio since March 9th. So I'm at home, I'm making stop motion animation. I'm also transforming plastic from everyday life into these like artifacts. So I have other side projects going on. Yes, but I will be painting once I get back to my studio, and it will be pretty small. Yeah.
Thanks. And we have 30 seconds. I just want to ask one last question from Selena's Mountain. Do you have any projects or exhibitions that were put on hold due to the pandemic?
Yes, actually. There was one show at St. Joseph's College that actually we delivered the work, the show went up, and then we just went to pick up the work this past week, you know, so the show was up, but the audience was not there because of the pandemic. Unfortunately, I was invited to a show outside the city, but due to the pandemic also, the show was, I was taken out of the show because they didn't want like a real person installing. They'd rather have people, artists with video and paintings that could be shipped or, you know, could be easily installed. So yes, I have definitely been affected. And there were also a few like artists, visiting artist opportunities that, yeah. But thank you. I think that's Olivia. Hello, Selena's Mountain.
That's right, Olivia. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cecile.
Thank you so much.
So next, we have Liz Collins. Liz Collins, her solo exhibitions and installations have been presented in New York at the Museum of Arts and Design, LMAC, Heller, and the Bureau General Services Queer Division, as well as the NADA Collective and Spring Break Art Fairs. Outside of New York, she's shown at the Tang Museum in Saratoga Springs, AMP Provincetown, Knoxville Museum of Art, Gallery DLUL in Ljubljana, Slovenia, and Rossana Orlandi in Milan. Liz's work has been included in group exhibitions in New York at Leslie Lohman Museum, Museum of FIT, New Museum, MoMA, the Drawing Center, Brick, Smack Mellon, Asia Geisberg, Sargent's Daughters, as well as at September Gallery in Hudson, New York, No Lab in Istanbul, Kristin Hielagierde in Berlin, and Luis de Jesus Los Angeles, LA Municipal Art Gallery, and Addison Gallery in Andover, Massachusetts. Liz has received a USA Fellowship, a McCall Johnson Fellowship, Foundation for Contemporary Arts and Artist Relief Grants, Drawing Center open sessions and residencies at Siena Art Institute, McDowell, Yaddo, Haystack, Museum of Arts and Design, and currently she's at the Two Trees Cultural Subsidy Studio Program in Dumbo, Brooklyn. Thank you. So welcome, Liz. Are you ready to start?
I am. Hi, Gabriel. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you all in the virtual space. Okay, I have a couple of things I'm going to read. This is like stream of consciousness writing that I thought I would share while the images are rolling. I work primarily in the realm of textiles to make art objects and environments with drawing, painting, and textile media, weaving, knitting, stitching, yarn, fabric, and create expressions often driven by the materials themselves as well as by pattern and repetition. I believe that objects take on meaning depending on their context. Thus, I see myself as someone who often creates context as an artist and produces objects and spaces that are meant to be looked at, experienced and enthralled, transfixed, absorbed, and confounded by both in these contexts and on their own. Structure, geometry, architecture, light, fire, explosions, volcanoes. I'm into everything, really. So then what makes my work unique? What motivates me to produce? Sometimes I think it's my very life force that pushes me to make things, to filter the world through my hands, to filter in my life, relationships, feelings, everything through my hands. Then there is also the act of material transformation, which is at the core of what I'm invested in doing. I see a material like yarn and feel enthralled by possibility, or like in this image, paper that wants to become light when it's dark. One thing I really like to make is patterns. I see patterns all around, and I'm constantly absorbing and regurgitating patterns that come from inside me, in my mind and my energy, but also things that exist or are classic or are known, are familiar, are solid, are truth, are real, are balanced. Here's a piece that has those elements and is about mountains. There's a heavy kind of landscape element to a lot of my works. Through my work, I'm on an ongoing journey that has to do with creating beauty and creating unbelievable special worlds, whether they be small objects or full environments. The idea of a world of color, a world of pattern, a world of texture, the push inside to materialize the abundance of life on Earth, of the life force, is core to what I'm trying to say. Actually, my work is not so much about trying to say something as it is about creating special, beautiful visual experiences that fit into the giant expanse of exquisite production that comes from humans transforming material, recording what we see, and telling stories about feelings and phenomena. Light, shadow, darkness, life, death, love, anger, fury, enthrallment, passion, faith, devotion. I want to make waterfalls, liquid colors that spill from hard, shiny surfaces. I want to make big, hairy mounds of tangled yarn that are full of color and get rough and crazy and wild, and then sleek, organized, precise, sharp, vivid, extreme, jagged, electric, pulsing with life and energy. I'm distilling all that I see and experience in the natural world into abstract elemental patterns and textures. Somehow the power of nature pushes through the work and is there. But then there is seduction through material, and beauty lies within, and the secrets and the mystery. Sometimes I feel like it's not really authentic for me to say so much in this format of writing. The work that I'm doing is such a reflex that it is too close to see clearly in words and analysis, I find. I struggle with the words sometimes. The experience is too intimate to me, too elemental for me to discern the tangible meaning and distill these things into a form like this. I do feel called to make, I do feel called to make and feel like everything drives me to make, and don't feel a choice as much as a firm belief in the power of visual elements in our lives, patterns, colors, textures that surround us and captivate for a moment, or surround us, relax us, turn us on, and transform us. This is at the New Museum. It was in the Trigger Gender as a Tool and a Weapon exhibition, and it's a space called Cave of Secrets. I think that's the last slide. Okay, here's the last one. This is Dark Eclipse, a view of an installation that is in LA and got closed down. It's a multi-artist installation called Flutter. That's a carryover from the Cave of Secrets project. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. Right on time. So now let's take questions from the audience. Who has a question for Liz? Again, just write, I have a question in the chat, or you can type out your question and I'll read it. So April Zhu has a question.
Hi, Liz. I actually saw your work at the New Museum, and I thought it was very kind of an intense, like, surrounding experience. I just want to ask, does your visual come from maybe psychedelic experience? And if not, what inspired you to make such intense visuals?
Thanks, April, for that question. I mean, the stuff I just read is somewhat of an explanation, but also in this particular space, there is a kind of psychedelic visuals there that is not in most of my other work, and that is because it's imagery that I pulled from a film called Liquid Sky that has a really incredible component of these psychedelic kind of passages where images what is it called? Destabilize and start to melt and then abstract. And it was a really cool early technology that was happening in the early 80s. And so this space was influenced heavily by that film. And it's a film I saw when I was like 13. I came to New York from DC and, you know, went to the Waverly and saw that film, and it was like, it had a huge impact on me in a lot of ways, and especially aesthetically, it was like high new wave. So I asked the director if I could use these images because they're so powerful and so akin to kind of my vernacular, I think, but also this otherworldly kind of language that is something completely different.
Thank you. Thanks for that question. Who else has a question? We have a couple more minutes left. It could be a question about process or materials or subject content, anything you want. Don't be shy.
Looks like Renee, there's a couple people have questions.
Oh, okay. So Renee Ray.
Yeah, hi. Fabulous work, really strong and powerful. What I was wondering is, what is your process? How do you plan it, or do you start working and things come? Can you speak to that a bit?
Sure, Renee, thanks. It ranges, it really ranges. Like some of the stitched pieces I do, I might draw out something basic and then the rest is improvisational. I like to think that I'm like a responder in a lot of ways. Like when I'm given a space to do an installation, I spend time in there just like waiting to see what comes to me, and then I leave and wait to see what comes to me, and then I start kind of forming a vision. It may have certain criteria attached to it, like if the space was partially curated, or there were certain kind of design issues that need to be addressed about the space. I like to say that I used a lot of design thinking. I mean, in some of the paintings that are conjoined, there's a lot of planning that goes into those because they have to be executed painstakingly. With the industrially woven textiles that I deconstruct, there's a laborious process that's about outsourcing and working with the textile mill and So it goes from a drawing and painting process into digitization and weave structure and kind of specifying that work. So like everything else I do, it's like this kind of broad range of things that's like really rich and diverse. A lot of it involves travel, so things are feeling a little different right now.
Thank you. And then Kim Beck has a question.
Kim.
Hi.
Hi. We know each other from way back.
I know. And, you know, I wanted to ask you just about your process of making things that hung on bodies and the translation of whatever that work was to making things that are paintings or installations. That I didn't know you during that
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, which may be many, I used to have my own fashion brand and I was a knitwear designer and had like a whole other career, like doing fashion shows and selling to boutiques and stores, etc. I mean, my knitwear was still very much my artistic expression. And I like to say that like all along I was an artist. I've been making art since I was a kid in different forms, you know, all different kinds of media, but really focusing on fashion, then my body was the three-dimensional space that I was engaged with. And sorry, someone's calling me. Jesus. And then I started working with space a lot through this project Knitting Nation, which is archived very well on my website. And that really engaged me with 3D space. And so then space became my new body, you know? So I went from like enveloping people in cloth at a very intimate level to enveloping myself and people in space at a much bigger level.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're out of time, but we're going to move on to Michael. Michael Palparito is his interdisciplinary practice spans a broad scope of mediums from videos to digital photography, sculpture, collage, and performance. His past residencies include the New Museum, Smack Mellon, the Marie Walsh Sharp Foundation, and LMCC. He's exhibited at El Museo del Barrio, the Studio Museum in Harlem, and the Kitchen in New York, as well as internationally at the Zacchetta National Gallery in Warsaw and the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Michael has been written about in the New York Times, Art in America, and the Brooklyn Rail. He's also a teaching artist and the co-founder of the Young Men of Color Film Video Training Program at Downtown Community Television in New York City. And Michael is also an artist mentor for Smack Mellon's Art Ready Mentorship Program for New York City public high school students. Michael earned a BA from the City College of New York. Michael, are you ready?
I am ready. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, ready, set, go.
Okay. So the first thing I want to say is all of my work is definitely informed by me being a Black man in this world of ours. And a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about in my work for years is now all out in the world right now. And it's what everybody's talking about. Usually all of my work is informed by incidences of stuff that has happened to me or things that I've seen in the media or things that I've discussed with students through mentorship. So these two first collages are, one's called Control and one's called Pressure. They both came out of conversations I've had with students that I was mentoring, and they're actually silhouettes made from photographs of the students that I've actually had the conversations with. And the image inside that are cut from is also part of what the story is in the collage. Next, White Women's Tears. I made this piece because in the media a while ago, and now it's again on in the forefront. This was informed by a lot of the news stories that were coming out about white women making up stories and saying they were victimized, and then it came out that the story just wasn't true. And then the woman who accused Emmett Till on her deathbed confess that she made it up. It wasn't true. So that's where this stuff comes out of. Next. This is a piece that I was commissioned to do for the New York Times 1619 project. And I wanted to show how Black music informs rock music. And they had asked me to make a collage for an article about yacht rock that was coming out in the 1619 magazine. Next, Overseer. This piece is called Overseer. It's about stop and frisk that was going on. I actually was a victim of that in Chelsea, going through art galleries. They said I wasn't supposed to be down there. They stopped me, frisked me, I told them I was an artist because they wanted to know why I had so many cameras in my bag. And they were like, yeah, I said I'm an artist. They were like, yeah, right, whatever. But anyway, so this piece was inspired and informed by that experience that I had. And next, the hypnotic. The next, this is, I like to take the familiar and reimagine it and do different things to it. And so I wanted to make an actual clan outfit out of kente cloth. And that's what this piece is. Next. Again, just creating images of how I believe society sees me or people's ideas about me. And this actually, I like to do things. I'm a perfectionist. So these collages I actually started doing recently, where I'm trying to get out of my comfort zone and use paper that it's not perfect. Using paint that's not perfect. Like when I paint it's not perfect. So, because I had this thing about everything had to be perfect. So I'm pushing myself and getting out of my comfort zone and not being perfect anymore or doing things so perfectly. Next. This is a piece called Black Pride, White Privilege. This is a mirror piece. It's vinyl, and I put it on the mirrors, and this piece has to be hung in a corner, so it looks like a revolving door. And that's what this piece is. Next. This is a collage that I made with the graduation photo of Mike Brown and the cop who actually executed him. And what I wanted to do was show how their worlds are intertwined. And if you see the image that's cut, that's the cop's picture is cut from, I wanted the image to depict what he said. He said that Mike Brown had a gun. He assumed that he had a gun. He thought he had a gun. And so that's what that is. That's why you see the gun behind the figure's back. And this collage was cut and then puzzle piece back together. It's actually cut and then put back together. Yeah. Next. This is another thing that's going on now, which I think is exciting. Brands that were out that had racial meetings, and I was trying to take those images back. And this is actually Uncle Ben's, and I extracted the face. Next. This is a small piece of vinyl and bottles, and if you walk around the piece, it's actually it talks about a relationship. So it's like different stages of a relationship. If you go around the bottle, it's about relationships. Next. Oh, that's it.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I did it.
Thank you.
I did it under 5 minutes. Yay!
Good job.
Okay.
Everybody's been doing a good job staying on top. Thank you. So who has a question for Michael Palparito? Again, don't be shy. You know, there's a comment from Kirsten Barrientos that says, wow, powerful work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Kate Teal says, great work. Who has an actual question though? Even though we agree that it's great work. I mean, again, okay, Hannah Owens, what is your question?
Hi, I agree that it's great work. I think we can all agree on that. I was wondering what you think of maybe in the art world or just in general, a lot of the responses maybe by people who are trying to be allies for the first time in the art world and producing reactionary art to what is going on with like BLM and all the things that, you know, how people are responding to the movement. What if you have an opinion as an, you know, activist artist yourself, like if there is a place for that, what is the place for that? How people should go about, you know, supporting the movement with their art, if they are an ally. Like what are your thoughts on that?
Well, thanks for your question. One of the first things I want to point out is that a lot of the times, a lot of my work, I've been struggling a lot to get my work shown because people, like a lot of people don't want to show the work, or they're afraid to show the work. So it's interesting now that a lot of people have been coming to me saying, oh, are you doing any shows? What are you working on? I think it's really interesting because for a while I was having a really hard time. Like people would say, oh, that work is too much. People don't want that in their house. Some galleries don't want to really put that stuff in there. It causes too many questions. You know, a lot of people don't want to talk about this kind of thing. So hopefully what my hope is out of all this that's coming out is that when the world opens up again, I hope that people will allow me a place to show work and to get some of this stuff out, because I have so much stuff. And I've just had people, like, I've donated work and gotten it given back to me. Because people just are like, it's just too much. But it's really interesting how everything switches and how everybody's focus changes. But I've had curators like say, I really want to show your work, but I just don't know how. I'm afraid to. I've had people say that to me. And some people said to me, some people have said to me in the past, like, why do you make things that are so like loaded? And it's really interesting, like this conversations that I've had and the opportunities that I've missed because of some of the stuff that I talk about in my work.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Renee Ray has a question.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I love your work. It's really strong, and I love how you bring in that imagery in your materials and text and the different sizes, which that was actually, I had two questions. A quick one, what size is your work? The other one was, I'd like to hear more about your transition from going from what you were doing, and now you said you want to explore and just loosen up or expand, explore more things.
And we
all right,
so
a minute left. Okay. Oh, sorry. The scales vary. My scales vary because, like, sometimes I have a space to work in, sometimes I don't. So I work with materials and I work in the scale that I'm able to work in. Because, like I said, a lot of my work is informed by like things that happen to me. So if I'm feeling a certain way, I want to get something out. That's how I work through it, and that's what actually has helped me survive through all of the stuff that I've been through. Is art has helped me do that. And as far as transitioning, I went to film school and I transitioned into being a visual artist. So it's really interesting now, because now that we're in like quarantine and all these things happening, I'm like kind of starting to think about doing video again. Not that I ever stopped, but I was doing more visual stuff like collages and things like that just to work out some things. But now I'm thinking more about doing some more stuff in film, but not abandoning the other stuff, but trying to do both. But I work in a lot of different scales and a lot of different mediums and a lot of different things.
Somebody else asked about scale as well. Can you just tell us what the scale of specifically of the collage pieces are? Like this one?
The collages are like, that one is 16 by, that's the 12 by 16.
And then this one?
That's 12 by 16. Those are two different ones, 12 by 16.
Okay.
This is the one for New York Times was 12 by 16 also.
Okay. And then what about like a piece like
this one, that piece, the small piece, that piece is, hold on one second. Oh, that's eight and a half by 9.5.
Okay, so they're relatively,
yeah, they're all different sizes.
Maybe a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and then next we have Florencia Escudero. Florencia was born in Singapore in 1987 and grew up in Argentina. She lives and works in Brooklyn, New York. Florencia's work has been exhibited in New York at Kristen Lorello, Instituto Cervantes, and the Steuben Gallery Pratt Institute, among other venues. She was a 2016 year-long artist in residence at the Loisaida Center in New York and has also completed residencies at Art Farm in Marquette, Nebraska, and Pilchuck Glass School in Seattle. Works by Florencia have been discussed in editorial magazine, Ether magazine, the art newspaper Hyperallergic, American Reader, Cultured Magazine, and the Brooklyn Rail. She is an editor and founder of Precog magazine. Florencia is also an artist mentor with Smack Mellon's Art Ready program. She earned an MFA in sculpture from the Yale University School of Art and a BFA in fine art from the School of Visual Arts. Florencia, are you ready?
Yes, thanks, Gabriel.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm gonna get the timer. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the first slide.
Yeah, okay. Ready, set, go.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I am a sculptor working with photography and digitally printed textiles. And my interest in this, I'm interested in how technology influences our relationship to each other and to ourselves. And I started being interested in this when I was mistargeted as a consumer of love dolls, and I started to follow the pop-up ads and see where they took me. And what I found most interesting was that a lot of the owners of the dolls were sharing images of their dolls framed as romantic partners. And so I started to collect images from these sites and online markets that sell full-size bodies made out of silicone and body parts made out of silicone. And I started making these textiles out of the digital collages, making pillows, and visiting this hotel in New Jersey and shooting these stage images. And I visited the hotel for 5 years, just making sculptures for each room. It is a love-themed room that you pay by the hour, and the themes, fantasy themes, could be anything from Egyptian to Greek to camouflage. So I was making work just to shoot, and then this is one of the pieces and I shot called Glitch Genie, and we can go to the next slide. And at a certain point, after working just for making photographs, I decided to start showing the sculptures. And I literally took the closet where I had been storing all the work in my studio out, and I put in a gallery. And then we can go to the next image. And the more time I spent in the hotel, the more time I was thinking about, oh, this kitsch aesthetic all around me, and it's kind of cheap, but also fun. And I started incorporating a lot of the elements in the rooms into the sculpture. So there's a lot of satin and mirrors and fake flowers. So we could go to the next image. And just incorporating these elements into the bodies that I was already looking at online. And they started to become fuller and more 3D. And if we go to the next image, and the next one. And at the same time, I started to think a lot about how a lot of our devices are feminized. So our cell phones, Alexa, Siris, they are programmed as these female voices that are supposed to respond and be there for us. And I was thinking about how the same way the objects online, these bodies didn't have agency. I was thinking about what these artificial intelligence creatures were learning from humans and what positive and negative traits were being inherited and, you know, reenacted by technology. So I started to think of like how I could give these creatures that I've been making more agency, and I started to give them personalities and faces, and I have them looking back at the viewer. And this piece is called Froglicker, and we could go to the next image. At the same time, I've been thinking about how images live online and how there's a pixel, but now we also have these more 3D objects that are built with wireframes and skins. And this piece is called Tardigrade Chakra, and it has this patch sewn on That's an image of a wire mesh of a face. That's also technology used for facial recognition. And
1 minute.
One minute, okay. And all of this has made me think about uncontrollable growth and how it's really hard to keep up with everything that's happening and to keep track of these technologies and their effects. And so my sculptures have become these mutants, and they, as you can see here, they're growing legs, and in the next image, they're also like growing arms, and in the next image, just general growth and becoming bumpy and more of a mutation of a digital and a material language. And I really want to use materials and handcraft like sewing to slow everything down and really think about what's happening and what are better ways to interact with technology and build better platforms. Ah.
You just made it. Thank you. That was the last slide, right? Okay.
Yes. Was it too fast?
No, it was perfect. Okay. Yeah, so who has questions for Florencia? Really fascinating work. I know you all must have questions. Don't be shy. Oops, sorry. Who has a question? Otherwise, I'm gonna ask a question. I know that I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question while other people think of other things that they wanna ask. Oh, wait a minute, sorry, Ward Shelley has a question. He says, this is very imaginative work. Would you dare to suggest a primary idea?
Not sure what that means.
What do you think, what does that mean, Ward? A primary idea? Ward, are you there? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next person. Audrey has a question, Audrey Irving, and then we'll go back to Ward after that.
Hi, Florencia.
Hi.
I love your work. I was interested to know about, like, there's certainly this like heavily gendered aspect to the work, obviously, but I'm wondering about race or nation or ethnicity. I mean, it certainly seems that there's a kind of anime-ish aesthetic and certainly something of the exotic. But I was wondering if those sort of themes are entering your mind, what you're drawn to in either what you're seeing, what you're responding to, what you're reproducing, and what that interest is for you.
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about all those things. I mean, a lot of these sites where the products are sold, the dolls and the toys, they're in China, and there's this particular aesthetic, and also thinking about cute, because there's this very like thin line between a toy for a child and a toy for an adult, and the materials are kind of similar. So there's like plastics and colors that are very similar, and that's something about consumerism that I think about a lot. And also in the thinking about race is like the way these objects are designed are fetishized. So there's a lot of fetish. And like, for example, today I haven't been followed by anyone on Instagram for a while, and then a doll started, like a doll started following me, and she's an Asian doll, and she likes to go to the beach, and you know, but she's always like cooking, and her like she's naked and she's cooking in an apron. So I was like, wow, this is weird, you know. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Wow.
Yeah.
So back to Ward's question, he's asking, what is the main thing you were thinking about in your work?
I think a lot about what it means to be a woman online and to exist digitally, and also how that influences my existence in real life.
Okay, great. Yeah, that's a great way to answer that. And then Cindy Pound has a question. What were the dolls again that you found online that inspired the work? So I guess she didn't hear what those dolls were.
Oh, okay.
But are they like sex dolls or what? I missed that. I think
yeah, they're called love dolls. Yeah. So yeah, they're like really high quality reproductions of women. Yeah.
Okay.
Like full size.
Yeah.
But you can also buy like body parts, you know, because that's a thing.
Great. Yeah, I know. I've heard about them, and yeah, I know other artists that have done work about these dolls, and like mainly like photo documentation of people that live with these dolls, because they're almost like, you know, sort of inanimate companions that they have. So it's like this subculture almost.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we might have time for one more quick question if somebody has another question. Otherwise, we're going to go on to our last speaker. Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Florencia. Okay. Okay. And then just one quick comment from Renee Ray to Florencia. Thank you. Great dichotomy between technology and handcrafting industry and domestic. So thank you for that. Okay, now we have Rotem Lineal, who is an artist and filmmaker. Her work merges sculpture and video. She's the founder and director of Cinema Balash, an artist-run screening series and micro cinema in Brooklyn, dedicated to collective viewing of experiments with light, sound, screens, liveness, and all aspects of the moving image. She recently curated the film and video program of the Manofilm Arts Festival. She's the recipient of the C12 Emerging Artist Prize, as well as grants from the OFF Foundation, the American Center, the AIF Fund, and others. She teaches art and video at CUNY and in museums throughout New York, and she lives and works in Brooklyn. So thank you. Rotem, are you ready?
Yeah.
Ready to start it? Okay. Sorry, let me just set the timer. Okay, ready, go.
Hi, so I work, like I said, between film and sculpture, and I often start by thinking about kind of the three main locuses of film, and I use them also as a metaphor for embodied experience, for kind of the structures of the psyche, and those things are the camera, the projector, and the screen, and they're often thought about as a kind of linear progression, where we start with the camera recording the world, then it gets projected, and it ends up on the screen. And when I started out, I was actually thinking about ways of undoing that linearity and thinking about how these things actually interact in different ways and how they can serve as a metaphor for being a person in the world. So next. So in these early sculptures, for example, I would make these projectors and I would kind of jerry-rig them out of stuff. This, for example, is a drill that's mounted on top of a slide projector that doesn't have slides in it. And there's this disc with lighting gels in it, which as it slowly turns around, it creates a kind of digital seeming image that's also very three-dimensional, almost like those early screensavers. And in this one, for example, you can see the screen is literally connected to the projector. So I'm interested in the relationship of the apparatus and the apparition. So what is making the image and what is the image we see? Next. So in this one, for example, there's a fan on the bottom right there. You can see there's a camera lens, and behind that, there's a bare tungsten bulb. And on the left, you see the projection that it creates. And what it does is as the fan hits that piece of cardboard that's attached, it moves the lens back and forth. So it changes a little bit, changes the focus. And what you're actually seeing is the diffusion glass of the actual light bulb. So the projector is projecting itself. The image is produced by the logic of the projector itself. Next. So I tried moving and playing with that logic and kind of applying it to narrative. And this is a piece called Chiasmus, and what you're looking at is the custom-built screening space that I made for it. And next, you'll see a little bit more in the next slide. So it's 2 screening spaces that share a single screen. So there's 1 screen, 2 screening spaces, and you can only enter from the outside. You can't cross over between them. And they're projecting versions of the same film, which you'll see in a second, if you could go to the next one. So this is a composite image made out of that video. And what I did is I built a circular set, and I had a camera mounted in the center on a motor, and the motor was turning and panning over these sets. And I shot it 3 times going left to right and 3 times going right to left, left to right. And each turn, I would change certain things in the set. And it would tell in voiceover and through the objects and through the things that were going on, it was telling these kind of family stories and historical narratives about violence, about the transmission of fears. Next. Specifically about birds eating my family members' eyes, which apparently is a thing that's happened more than once. But it's also about kind of how fear and violence is transmitted. So you can kind of see, these are screen grabs from at 10-minute intervals, and you can see kind of some of the subtle changes that happen. So the paper changes, what is in it changes, the books change, objects change, and so on. Next. So this is a video that I'm working on that I'm finishing up actually these days. And it's called A Farewell to Orpheus. And Orpheus, it's based on the Greek myth of Orpheus, which for those of you who don't remember, Orpheus, great musician, falls in love with Eurydice. They marry, and of course, a snake bites her on their wedding day and she dies. She goes down into the underworld. He's heartbroken and he goes down and he begs Hades for her back. And Hades agrees in this kind of draconian deal. He says you can have her back so long as you walk without turning back to see if she's behind you until you both cross over back into the land of the living. And of course, he crosses over and she hasn't yet, and he loses her again. And this is about that kind of second loss, that kind of devastation and grief. And what I did is, you can see that set, there's a track in the middle, and you can see the camera, it passes through it, and I'm shooting it once going in and once going out. And you can see on the bottom there, there's a green screen. So the camera hits the green screen. And what I'm doing is that, you can go to the next slide. I'm embedding the next shot in that green screen. So you're constantly going in and in and in and in, into an image, into an image, into an image. And it's going to be projected on either side of the space so that you, the viewer, are constantly turning around like Orpheus and kind of recreating that loss, because you're literally missing something, turn around, you miss it again. Next. And I just wanted to talk for a second about Cinema Balesh, which is actually where I'm sitting right now. And it's a screening space that hopefully one day we'll be able to sit with strangers again. But it's where I kind of play with film. So for example, on the right, you can see a flyer for what I called No Show and Tell, which was a screening of movies without actually screening a movie. It was artists who just told movies. Or on the top, there's a series called Typologies where I edit full-length films, for example, just out of scenes of people crying. And yeah, all kinds of ways of playing with film. And I'm imagining I'm out of time.
Thank you, Rotem. Yay. So we're going to start questions. Rob Hickman asked if there is a link to the video, and you did send us a link, which I am going to put in the chat. Or you sent us a couple of links, so let me put those in the chat, and people can go back and watch them at their leisure. Oops.
So I think I sent you 2 links. One is to one of the videos of Chiasmus, which is that endless pan. And the other one, I think I sent you part of an opening of openings, which is a movie collectively created by various artists that is just opening scenes of movies. So it's if anybody is looking for some entertainment, you can watch 2 hours of openings as a movie.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. So that's what those links are. Who else has a question for Rotem? Again, don't be shy. Okay, it looks like Ward has a question. How many years have you been working with motors and projections? The first image, how much time between first and last?
So I started working with, well, I was always a tinkerer my entire life. But I started making these motors actually in undergrad. And I kept doing them through grad school into, I would say, 2014, maybe 2015. I still sometimes play around. I mean, yeah, I still play around with that, with those ideas, though I have kind of moved more into film. Yeah, something that is maybe more, the end product ends up being a video, even though the process is sculptural. So I will make these elaborate sculptural devices, for example, that set with the motor, with the camera moving, but then ultimately what you see is a video. But I still think about that video as a sculpture, because it is still tied to its making, to the process by which it is made.
Who else has a question? Okay, I guess I have a question. It seems like you're very interested in the sort of formal qualities, maybe of filmmaking, like exposing the apparatus behind it, and but I also wanted to ask about the content of the work that's projected, or the images that's projected, and is there a subject matter or narrative that unfolds as part of it, and is that connected to the exploration of the formal qualities of the film as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So those earlier sculptures, yeah, were kind of more abstract and were very much dealing with those kind of formal aspects, projected light, motion, and kind of moving into kind of the idioms, the way that movies are made, what a camera movement means, what a projection means, where you are as a viewer in relation to it, kind of became part of the kind of formal investigation. But the content is often personal and historical. So for example, in Orpheus, it's a retelling of that myth, but it's also a retelling of stories of immigration and questions of archaeology. So the idea of thinking historical in the ground, the taking them out of the ground is part of the process of revealing them, but then also killing them. And similar stories about interment and death, and kind of personal stories. So in Chiasmus, for example, that story with people's eyes being eaten is also a story of my father's fears of, say, the sea and of dogs that come from my grandmother's fears from the Holocaust, my grandmother's fear of birds, which seems benign, tied to her story of immigration from Morocco. So it's kind of like the way that personal history and kind of global history, social and private, all of those things kind of mix up, and how film itself is kind of a repository of kind of a collective dreaming or a collective nightmare often.
Wow, that's great, thank you. There's one more question, and you kind of touched on this actually. Elmira asks, would you speak to the idea of mythology in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I mean, mythology really is in its essence, right, a way to kind of preserve consciousness, something that ties to a private experience, something that is kind of humanist in the sense that when we talk about grief, right, we don't have to be Orpheus, we don't have to believe in Zeus in order for that story to touch us, right? Thousands of years in the future, we're still processing some of the similar things. And I think about it as kind of a proto-psychology. So mythology as a way, right, if we have psychoanalysis in the 19th century trying to kind of map out what it means to be a human, what it means to have kind of urges or desires or an inner world, or what these things mean that are somehow universal in some way. And then looking at mythology as kind of a proto-psychology and kind of looking at history and the way that it then gets processed through film, through images, through mythology, through narrative, and so on. And how like all these apparatus, going back to the apparatus, those are all apparatuses. Mythology is an apparatus in a similar way that film is an apparatus.
Thank you so much. So thank you. We're out of time, but I want to thank all of the artists who presented, Cecile, Liz, Michael, Florencia, and Rotem. Thank you all. And thank you to the audience for your great questions and comments. If there is anyone in the audience who's interested in asking the artists follow-up questions about their work, I noticed that we didn't get to all of the questions for some of the artists. Becky is going to post their emails in the chat. And they've all agreed to let you contact them directly by email. And we're also including their Instagram handles if you want to follow them on social media. So before you go, let me remind you about part 2. We're going to share the link to the submittable application again. Again, Becky is going to do that momentarily. And actually, let me stop sharing. Okay.
For some reason, it's not letting me send anything to everyone. So I'm going to just copy and paste it. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Do you want a minute to figure that out, or, oh, there.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are all the artist emails and Instagram handles. If you want to copy those. And then, so let me tell you about part 2 again. So if you're an artist and would like to have a chance to participate in part 2, which are the closed group sessions with one of these 5 artists that just presented, you can submit your work on Submittable using the link that was just posted. You'll have until this Sunday, July 5th, until 11:59 p.m. to submit your work. And we're going to try to accept people on a first come, first served basis as much as possible, but we do have to include at least 60% women artists, and we are interested in having a diverse representation of artists. The spots are limited, so submit early. Don't wait until 11:50 on Sunday to submit. Try and submit earlier than that. And then if you're selected, we'll get back to you with more details. But basically, you'll be presenting your work to the group following a similar format as today. 5 artists will share their work, 5-minute max presentations, 5 minutes of discussion after each. And then the closed group meeting will happen next Thursday, July 9th at 6 p.m. same time. And this information is also going to be on our website, smackmellon.org, on the 5max program page, if you don't get it off of this right now. So, okay. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everybody for coming. It's great to see such a great, large group audience. Thank you.
It's really wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everybody, and hopefully we get to see each other one day in person.
Yes, absolutely. Bye. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Ending the meeting. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Audrey.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.